Anyway, we've managed to find some of them. Which lions these are, I don't know yet, but we'll tell you shortly. It's an absolute carpet of lions. It looks like all the sub-adults from the Nkuhuma Pride. That's what it looks like. So it's not many of the adult females are here by the looks of things. I can see maybe 2 adult females with the rest of them, but that is the Nkuhuma Pride incapacitated on the road, so no wild dogs there. That's just lions that are all over the road, which is still not the worst idea. Now, Tax is asking me about these lions, so let me just tell him what's going on. No, Tax, I've just located them. Just come on to Gallagher shortcut, just south of that shortcut that goes up to the fire break. So, there we go. Now, it's so cool to see the Nkuhuma Pride. We've been spoiled with lions lately, considering how we've had such a drought prior to this. You know, when it was dry, we had virtually no lions. It was a real struggle to find lions. And in the last I'd say about the last week, it's just been lions every day, which is not something that we're complaining about, although these lions look as though they are not going absolutely anywhere today. You can see bellies are already up, feet are up, and so I think it's a situation where these guys must have walked far. And I know they've walked far because last night they were at Simambili around the Pungwe drainage line. Now, Pungwe drainage line sits just on the eastern side of Simambili camp. It's very close to Simambili camp, and that's a long way from here. So these lions must have walked all the way through the night to get to this point. And they've come from sort of midway in Djuma and turned northward. So they didn't walk a straight line to this area, which means that it's probably been a long day for the sub-adults, and that's why they're all having a bit of a nap at the moment. But everybody's quite relaxed. I see that the little cub is also inside here, just on the far right of the Pride. It's lying, there it is. So there's the little cub over there, and then you can see the rest of them going forward. Now, after seeing the Styx Pride yesterday and the day before, you realize very quickly just how much better quality the Nkuhumas are at the moment. They are much bigger lions. Their coats are in far better condition. So, you know, it's amazing when you see the Styx by themselves, you don't really notice it as much, but there's definitely more bulk in these Nkuhumas and far more sort of cleanliness, if you want to call it that. They almost look like poster lions as opposed to the poor Styx, who are still struggling a little bit with that mange. But if you listen around us, there's francolins going absolutely crazy. So these are the alarm calls that we often try and use when finding cats. So it's a very different call to their normal call when they do this. This is when they're sitting on a tree and they're upset because they've now seen this predator, and they make this different sound altogether. And so we've got one on each side of us. I would imagine maybe they were waking up this morning and deciding, well, we're going to come onto the road, and all of a sudden saw a pile of cats, and then very quickly spooked and went up into the trees. And so that's why there's so much noise all around us. I'm interested to know, though, where the rest of these lions are, or where the rest of the Pride is, because all of them went to the west, and it seems only a few of them have come back. Looks like only 2 adult females in this whole grouping that I can see. It's so difficult now to make out the difference between them, but if I count them, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Do we have 11? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, we've got 11. So we're actually only missing 1 then. And it's difficult to make them all out also when they're facing away from you, but we're missing 1 lioness then out of this whole group. Now, she might be quite close by. There might be one just lying off a little bit in the bush. Can you see her? Ah, there she is. She is lying there. Okay, so the whole Pride is here. Excellent news. So we've got all 12 of the Nkuhumas around, which is great. So hopefully they are going to get up at some point. I'm pretty sure when that sun gets up, they are going to move. So, Emily, this is a very interesting question, and one it's quite in depth. You're asking about guidelines in terms of guides being trained as to proximity to animals, what they can and can't do, how close you can get, and is it different for different animals? So the short answer to that, Emily, is yes, guides are trained on it, but no, they don't always apply it, and a lot of guides can be quite unethical about what goes on, and they don't appreciate the animal's space. which is not good. And so it's something that gets trained into, the better training schools try and train it as well as possible. And the third part of that answer is, yes, it does depend on different animals. So basically what happens is when you become a guide, you're going to start driving around and you're going to have an assessor with you or a trainer that's going to be with you, and you're not going to have the first idea. I can tell you the first time you are becoming a guide and you're behind the steering wheel and you come across a pride of lions like this, you're absolutely petrified as to how far you can go, how close you can go. The concept of lions right next to you in an open vehicle just doesn't really seem to sit very well. It kind of doesn't feel like that's the best idea at all. And so you kind of have to think about what you're doing a little bit, and you've got to get told as to how it is. And the thing is about any sort of work that we do out here, the idea is not to disturb the animal. So yes, a vehicle is going to disturb an animal. Now I just need to move a little bit because Tax is behind me, so I just want to pull off so he can also see what's going on, and then we'll have a situation where both of us are in the right place. Is that all right, Ferg? Good. So there's a proximity situation where you don't want to disturb the animal in any way. You want to be able to go into a place where the animal itself going to feel uncomfortable in your presence. So if you had to drive here and the whole pride had scattered and jumped off the road, you've driven too close. Whereas where we are now, you saw when we arrived, as soon as we saw them in the road, we just pulled off a little bit and we viewed them from there, and therefore those lions are not going to be too phased. In fact, most of them didn't even lift their heads when we arrived. So that's one thing. The second thing is that a lot of the animals here in the Sabi Sands area are very relaxed. They know the vehicles, they know people on foot, and so generally they're not too scared when a car approaches. But some animals will be a little bit different. And if we take, let's say, hypothetically, Hukamuri as an example, as opposed to Hosana, you can drive and he'll walk within a meter of you, whereas Hukamuri still doesn't quite have that trust in you, and he'll kind of move 5-6 meters away. So it's important to recognize the signs when you see an animal crouching or an animal looking in your direction or shaking its head. If it's an elephant, then you know you've gotten too close. And so that's the thing with these animals, is to try and just judge when you are not affecting them. If you're affecting them, then you've gotten too close and you've made an error in your judgment. So as soon as an animal changes what it's doing or its path or the way that it's walking, the speed that it's walking, you've done it wrong. And so it's important to learn how to judge that distance, and there's very telltale signs in any animal when you're that close. Of course, things like impalas and wildebeest and zebras, they're animals that are quite common out here. They cross roads a lot, and so often you get into a situation where you come across them on the roads and you slowly kind of move through them and they just part there on the road and you can go through. But things like elephants, you can't do that with. You just have to give them right of way, and most animals you should actually give right of way as well. But generally we try not to disturb them and try and leave them alone as best as possible. Right, well, that was a fairly good start to our morning and fairly easy tracking session with regards to lions. We'll leave the difficult stuff up to Ali and, well, my friend Byron, who is out and about, but is not on a vehicle this morning. He's deciding to use his legs and go for a little walk. From wild dog tracks to lions lounging on the road, it's been a good start to the day, that's for sure, and a good start to a Sunday. So hopefully our lions will continue to relax and then maybe wake up a little bit, just so that we can at least see them on the move for a while. But I don't think that that's going to be happening. I think we're going to have a situation where we're going to have some rather sleepy lions taking it very easy for the morning. And they don't really look like they want to go anywhere, do they? They're not exactly kind of brimming with energy and sort of running around all over the show. It looks as though they're just taking it as easy as possible. Like I said, they've probably been quite busy already. I mean, they look as though they've had a small meal. It doesn't look like anything major, maybe a little, impala or something like that between them, because some of them have got little rounded tummies, but others not so much. So maybe they were hunting quite a bit last night and they've moved a lot, and so I suppose they've earned their snooze. You can see that's a very content young female that's lying at the front of the pride. So very cool to see them though, and even if they are sleeping like this, the Nkuhuma Pride is just such a special part of Safari Live and in the history that we've had with them, and the fact that they are probably some of the most beautiful lions that we've got in the Sabi Sands makes them an epic pride to spend time with. And what I'm hoping is that there is quite a few clouds around, but I'm hoping that the sun breaks a little bit, and if the sun breaks, maybe that's going to be a trigger just to get them to move a little bit and just to see what they get up to and what they maybe are potentially going to do. But I have a sneaky suspicion that this is what we're going to see from them throughout the drive, and then they're going to be here this afternoon, and hopefully then this afternoon they'll be up and moving. But epic nonetheless to find them, and like I say, it's always good when we've got lions around. Now, if only another herd of buffalo would be back on Djuma, that would certainly help the situation and motivating our pride to actually begin movement and start going somewhere. You can see though all of the ears that are flicking all the time. It's because the flies are uncontrollable this morning. Wisteria whisper, the reason lions like roads so much is very simple. That's much like any other animal. So you'll find dogs, hyenas, lions, leopards, most animals will, even buffalo to a degree, use the roads. And it's because if you look on each side of the road, the vegetation that's there is long grass, it's thick, it's dense, and so there's two things about that. One, you can't really see very nicely in front of you. It's much easier on a road just to kind of plow along and to be able to make distance quite quickly. There's no obstructions, there's no difficulty in seeing where you're going. You're not going to get your foot into a ditch or anything like that. It's going to be much easier to walk. The second thing is that walking in long grass has its problems. When you walk in long grass, you're going to pick up ticks, you're going to pick up parasites, burrs on your coat, just general amounts of things that are going to make your life a little bit more difficult. So more parasites, more in terms of, like I say, things that are going to be on your coat that you have to groom off later. So walking on a road negates that aspect of it. And the third thing is that roads generally run in a straight direction. And so if lions or leopards or whatever animal wants to try and get somewhere, it's much easier for them to use that road than it is to go through thickets. They don't have to go around trees or anything like that. They can just get on the road and go. And so that's why they use roads a lot. In terms of sleeping like this, they're sleeping on the road probably because the grass is very damp this morning. There was a lot of dew on the grass when we came out. I had got out, drove past some grass and you could see the droplets all over it. And so there's a lot of dew around, which means that they probably get quite damp lying in the grass. And the road surface itself is probably nice and cool. There's still a residual moisture that's coming out of the ground, which probably means the road surface is fairly cool and it's not the worst place to be able to lie. Again, it's also out of the way of things like ticks and parasites as well. Right, well, our lions are very sleepy, so we're going to give it a little while longer before we maybe decide to carry on with the wild dog tracking. But while we sit and contemplate our movements, let's send you back across to Ali, who I believe is looking at tracks in the road. Well, Byron, we've got plenty flies outside too, and the Nkuhuma Pride, they have moved, but all of about 2 meters, which is where they are now lying in thick grass. So I think they're just prepping for a day of rest. They've gone in underneath some bushes as well, some of them. And so it seems as though everybody's just finding their spot for the day. That one's going to have a bit of grass first, though. It's important to have your salad as well as your meat as a cat and make sure that you keep your digestive system in good shape. But everybody's slowly but surely kind of moving off the road. I'm pretty sure we're going to have a situation where this is where they're going to rest for the day. I don't think they're going absolutely anywhere. The only reason that they maybe moved off the road is because the sun is getting a little brighter, and maybe with the vehicles that are coming in and out, they've just decided it's time just to get up and kind of go and lie under some trees. Maybe it's also better for the flies. I don't know, because the flies this morning are really a pain in the backside. They're literally landing all over us. And when I say flies, I'm not talking about 1 or 2. It feels like there's about 40 or 50 of them buzzing around the car. So I can only imagine how many are buzzing around our lions at the moment. Now I see one is having a good grooming session in front. So while that one's eating grass, the 2 in front are almost getting ready to get up and move. There we go. So that one is up and going to come across and go and lie down probably in a similar position. So it's one of the little sub-adult females. And they are looking really good, these little sub-adults. I mean, they hopefully are going to keep growing and getting bigger. I'm interested to see how this pride goes in terms of, are they going to stay together or are they going to end up splitting up? Because we know with the Mangan Pride, every time there's kind of the lionesses get to over 10, there's a split that takes place and everybody else goes and kind of lies down and, goes in their own direction. So the sub-adults or the adults split apart from each other. I wonder if Nkuhuma Pride is going to be different and they're going to stay together as a massive unit of 10 females. That's going to be interesting if they are. It's just one lioness left on the road. She's up and moving now as well. So it's the injured lioness that's getting up. Her injury still is there, but she's looking good. I mean, like I say, if we consider how that was to start, that's really not bad. Danny, when the subadults become adults, will they mate with the Birminghams? Possible. It depends on whether the Birminghams are still dominant here at that point. These subadults have still got probably a year and a half to 2 years until they're actually going to be sexually mature enough to mate, even maybe a little bit longer. And so that means that the Birminghams have got to still be dominant in 2 years' time in this particular section. While they should be dominant, it's possible that they might not be, and there's other males in this area. But if they are dominant, then yes, they will mate with their own dads, which I know is weird, and it is part of lion society. It happens quite regularly, actually. The worst thing I've ever seen is a female that mated with her own sons to produce offspring, not just once, but 3 times, which is a little bit weird. So that's, I suppose, a similar thing, I suppose, mating with your dad. But also the thing is we don't know who of the Birminghams is the actual father of these cubs. They might mate with a different Birmingham who is not the same male, and theoretically might not be the same litter, and therefore the genetic code is okay. So we'll just see how it goes, but hopefully, the pride lasts and the Birminghams stay, because if the Birminghams aren't around, then those subadults are going to have a tough time of it anyway. But there comes Mom with little cub in tow. Cub, are you thirsty, girl? Mom is carrying a bit of a limp as well. Shame, my girl. I think she just wants some peace and quiet, and this little cub just doesn't want to give her any. There we go, straight into suckling. There we go, so that's the roadblock has been removed, and you can see everybody is now sleeping in the grass. I don't think we're going to get much more from these lions, unfortunately. So what I think we're going to do is maybe